Welcome to Heartspeak Podcast, episode 131, Birthing into Freedom. Well, hello there, wherever you are in the world. It's so good to have you with me today. And happy Passover, happy Easter, happy any other times that we are celebrating at this moment that talk about the freedom of the Israelites away from slavery, the freedom that we experience through death and resurrection. And that's what we're going to talk about today. I saw that what's being represented by Passover, by Easter, is very representative of what we're going through now. We were moving through quite happily in our lives in 2019, and all of a sudden we were thrown into the darkness of the tomb or the womb, the time where we weren't sure about what the new future would hold. And now I'm seeing many of the restrictions being lifted, people experiencing more freedom. And that's the metaphor that I'm going to be talking about, because it's not just a physical freedom, liberation. I wonder what's gone on in your life since, we could say, 2019 till now. What have you felt that you've been liberated from? What have you released yourself from? What did you die to? And I'm going to look at those three phases that we talk about at Easter, for instance, where we have the death on Good Friday, we have imagining Jesus in the tomb on the Saturday, and then the resurrection on the Sunday. That idea of this 3-day ritual that is so important, especially, may I say, to women, because it's that 3-day ritual that women go through every month, whether it's through their period or with the dark moon, those 3 days of the dark moon around the new moon, where every woman knows how to release, to connect, and to give birth to something new. That's the cycle of women's creativity. Doesn't mean men can't do that, but women's periods are set up in order to have that experience, the release, the connect, the rebirth. And you might say, well, doesn't that appear to be exactly what Jesus went through? Absolutely. And you'd be surprised to know, I'm sure you wouldn't be, but every culture has talked about 3 days, 3 days of creativity, 3 days of change. So we're going to look at that through history and through other means, but it's also what Bruce Lipton talks about. He says that we can change our receptor sites, the receptor sites living on our cell membrane, where those receptor sites may be the lock into which the key goes. I've talked about that before. So that if you have certain receptor sites, certain perceptions of reality, certain beliefs, he says it only takes 3 days to change those beliefs, change those perceptions, change your receptor sites. So this idea of 3 is not only a historical or religious idea, but also it's there in our bodies. We just have to act as if something is different, and our body will start to change, and our health will change with that. If I may say, it's also the reason why many of us wake at 3 a.m. 3 is the time, that moment where we have least connection to the physical world. And so we're more in a space where we're in between spirit and matter. We're in between. We're in that twilight zone where magic happens. And I think sometimes when we're looking at Easter, it's often like you may focus on the Good Friday, the Jesus being on the cross and the death, or you may celebrate the Easter Sunday with the Easter eggs and the bunnies. And often that Saturday is left like, oh, well, there's this day in between. Actually, the Saturday is the most meaningful day. The Saturday is when we are between the worlds. We're living in that twilight zone. We're living where everything is possible and nothing is fixed. And to me, that's part of the lockdown. So if we were to see that we had ourselves as little caterpillars in 2019, and then we went into the cocoon or the lockdown in 2020, in 2021, we're becoming the butterfly. But you may be saying, God, I can't wait to be a butterfly. But what I will say is the depth that we experience in 2020, in the lockdown, will define how we look as a butterfly in 2021 and beyond. So how much have we let go? How much did we die? How much would we release? And how deep did we go? Because what I am hearing people talk about is, well, when I can get out and about again, I'm going to carry on with that same intention that I had before. That's not what this is about. This is one of the most monumental times in our life, in the life of humanity. So I want the idea that what went on before is not what I'm going to continue. And again, I'm just approaching this from a Christian belief system that the 40 days before Easter, which we call Lent, leading up to that, we often see it as a time of or letting go of things, of not eating the wrong foods or eating certain foods. It was time of giving up eggs and dairy and other things. But it also was a time where Jesus was tempted by different things. I'll give you this if you do this. So even though we're now, where I'm recording this is just at the end of Lent, this lockdown period is also, where am I tempted, or have I been tempted by certain promises or staying a certain way, or even telling myself I need to be a better person? In other words, again, if I'm a better person, then this will happen. So those sorts of temptations, where am I being driven by fears? Where am I being driven by, if I do this, then this will happen? Does that make sense? So those 40 days prior, that what we call Lent, were days where we are all looking at what has been driving my bus, what has been tempting me in my life to lead a life as I'm leading it. Why am I doing what I'm doing? That's in another way of me saying it. What purpose have I got? Now, you may say to me, well, I'm saving the world or I'm helping people. That's fine. But what are you hoping to get back from it? Well, I'll feel better I do this. Oh, I want to feel that I'm special. And that's the thing, that they're the temptations that I want us to look at. They're the things we don't always want to share with anybody. I'm doing it because I'm a good person. I'm doing it because I do this. No, there's usually an agenda. And if there's no agenda, then there's no pressure on you to do it. So if you just do it because you enjoy it, and in that next moment you could say, right, I'm not going to do it anymore, then there's no attachment to the result. There's no way you're saying, I need to get this personally out. This is my goal. This is what I'm going to achieve by doing this thing. They, to me, were the temptations of Christ. They were the ones that were saying, you're hooked into something here. And I would say, before we come out of lockdown, we want to be really clear and say, have I got any ties to me? Have I got any attachments that would stop me being totally free, birthing myself into freedom? Or am I still waiting for something to happen, or expecting something to happen, or more importantly, expecting something of myself that puts me under pressure? Many people talk to me about, well, I want to get this done before I die, so there's a pressure on me. Or I want to give my children the very best. Perfect, but there's again a pressure. What did it mean just to be you? Just to do it because this gives you enjoyment? And some of you might say, well, that's very selfish. It's not selfish. Because whenever we have an agenda, I'm doing this for you because I expect this coming back, it means that I'm actually manipulating you to accept what I'm giving you so that I get something back in return. And however much you may not like that word manipulation, when we have an attachment to a result, when we have an expectation, we talked about that last time, I am manipulating you to act in a certain way so I receive a result. So those temptations that Christ went through on those 40 days are really what we've been going through. Why am I doing what I'm doing? Why am I living with this person? Why am I relating to those people in a certain way? Where am I acting out a certain way in order to get a certain result? I can relate to that myself, where I've been recognizing recently of, being the nice person is the way I act out, so I manipulate people to like me. But when I really am true to myself, I'm not so manipulative, or I'm not reading what someone else wants. I'm honest. And when I'm honest, we have a better relationship. And I'm not expecting someone to act out a certain way, because I'm now just saying, if I'm true to myself, I'm asking you to be true to you. I hope you're getting an idea of that sort of Lent experience, those 40 days, 40 nights, those temptations, because those temptations are not outside us, they're often inside us. We call them our little demons, don't we? I mean, maybe I call them my little demons. What are my little demons, my little gremlins whispering in my ear? If you do this, you'll be a nicer person. If you do this, then you'll be loved. If you do this, then nobody will leave you. So what are the little things that go through our head? And sometimes what we do is we don't want to meet those, so we just, run harder or meditate better or do anything but stay still. So in the time of the stillness, in the desert, there's no distractions, there's nothing around, we're just ourselves. So this is the meaning of that Lent time of being with yourselves, being self-reflective. And many of you have been through that through these last few months, being faced with ourselves. And of course, that's not always comfortable, so we get ourselves busy. Or I'm listening to so many things online, I'm listening to Christine's podcast. But truly, having that space where we just have to listen to ourselves. Sometimes, as I have found, people get ill just to be stopped in their tracks. And then they blame their body. Well, if my body wasn't so ill, I would be fine. No, the body is actually going to get you to stop. It's the friend of the soul. It's not the friend of the personality. It doesn't care whether you like it or not. So many a time we're trying to fix the body so we can continue on the lousy path that's killing us. All right? We can try and fix the relationship so we can continue on the lousy path that's killing us. So these are those temptations where we tell ourselves, if I just try harder, or I'm a better person, then everything will go right. I bargain with God. And that's part of this. Where are you bargaining with God, or bargaining with yourself, or bargaining with anybody? And so that's the period that we call Lent. That's the period where we sit with ourselves in the desert and we face all those temptations. And really, the day that we call Good Friday, and that what comes in is that death on the cross, isn't done by someone else. There are so many different symbols of what the cross means. Where you have an equilateral cross, the four directions, four corners in a circle, this is the power of the creative force. This is the creator. Some call it God. But it's saying when we have that circle around a cross, it means this is where the feminine and the masculine come together. The cross is structure, the feminine is the circle, and it's really where creation happens in the moment. That's a very ancient symbol that we find, many, many thousands of years back. And it's not necessarily saying it's out there, it's saying that creator is inside us. It's almost the heart chakra. We are the creator. When we bring together, almost I could say, intention, which is the structure, and the circle flow, we have creation. All right, so I just wanted to share, that's a very ancient cross. And there are crosses like that, such as the Celtic cross, that brings in somewhat similar. There's a Maltese cross that has 8 different points to it, which is about bringing heaven onto earth. And there are crosses in many different religions. And obviously in the Christian church, it's the cross where the horizontal is much higher. You have the vertical is much longer. then you have the cross at the top. But in that case, I could symbolize it as the energy that runs up and down our spine. We call it the Kundalini energy, but making sure that that isn't just up and down your spine. It connects to the root chakra underneath your feet. So bringing the energy up from the grid, the energy, how can I put this? So when you tap into the root chakra, you're tapping into the collective unconsciousness of Mother Earth. You are tapping into serpentine energy that brings creation in. And when we bring that up, that is the vertical axis of the Christian cross. And then we get to the third eye, that's where the horizontal line is. And why is that? Because at the third eye, that's all about intention. So the vertical, I could say, is that feminine energy of creation, the power, the sexual energy of creation. And the horizontal line is the masculine, which is the intention. So when I set my intention and I draw this energy up, creation happens. All right, so you might say, well, why did we use that as dying on the cross? It was because that was the intention, to die to the old patterns and to bring new birth in. So the symbol of the cross is not about just the death. It's about the oneness with the creative force. I hope that makes sense. So that when we set our intention, we draw the energy up, I'd say this masculine, feminine energy come together, whole change happens in our life. So if you want to see it another way, it's about change. It's about newness. It's about dying to something old. So, Jesus dying on the cross, you can say, well, he died because of the history, but that was his destiny. His destiny was to come back from those temptations, to die to his old ways and be reborn again on Easter Sunday. And if you want, and you were brought up Christian, you might say, well, he died for our sins. But the word sin means separation. So in some ways, what he was doing was saying all of those temptations we have, all those chatter that goes on in our little mind, keeps us separate from ourselves. So in this process of bringing this energy up, setting an intention, he created the blueprint, the role model for all of us to follow. All we have to do is to bring that energy up, be clear in our intention, not let our mind get us all scattered, and we basically become one with our Creator. There we are. I'm putting all that together. So I'm saying dying to your small self in order to exist in your big self is what this is about. And that Jesus' journey, as in many different stories, mythologies, many different stories tell, whether we're looking at Egyptian times or Mesopotamian times or further back and further back, they all talk about the same thing, that we have to die to our old selves to be born again. And that's what that story is talking about. So where do we go when we die? We go into the womb of Mother Earth. We go into the womb or the tomb. So a tomb is that we've died, but we enter the womb. We enter the womb of collective consciousness. We enter the nothingness. Everything's possible, what I call the ocean of possibilities. So it's always important to recognize we don't just go from caterpillar to butterfly. We have to break down that old structure. There's always a doorway, a passageway between two doors. It's not just going from one place to another. That third element is essential for true creativity. It's not an either or. So on that Saturday, Easter Saturday, or as we die, we go into the tomb, into the womb, and there we are, floating, you could say, on the ocean of possibilities, floating with ourselves, saying, I am neither there nor this. I am just me. And that's what terrifies a lot of people, because they want to know exactly what's going to happen when they come out the other side. Can you guarantee that it's going to be what I want? Can I fix my future so I'm safe? And the only thing I can tell you is as soon as we fix our future or we say, this is what I'm here to do, we've already limited our potential. So being able to be in that creative energy, that source of creation, is the most magical thing. And that's what I call mystery. It is trusting that between an out breath, the dying, and holding our breath out, the womb, and then that next in breath, the inspiration, the new birth, we will always breathe in again. We are programmed to breathe in again. So however much you might hold your breath in, out, there's going to be a time where your body goes, okay, need to take another breath in. We're programmed to do that, my friends. So why do we not trust it? Why do we not trust the gap, the space? We want to be in that space. And it isn't a space of even filling it with doingness, or in that space, I'm just going to meditate more. It's a space where we experience our expandedness, our unlimitedness. We are everything and nothing. And then on our third day, we rise again. Because now it isn't the fact that we're just saying, good, now I can be a butterfly. The third day, the Easter Sunday, the eggs are based on the fact that we have expanded our consciousness. We've expanded our light body. We are no longer the person we were before. And this is why we're freeing ourselves. And that was the passage that many traditions talk about, not just Christianity, about this figure, both male and female, entering into what they called a virtual death. Often it was a part of an initiation to die to who you were. Sometimes those initiations involved you being buried alive, or sometimes you went into a cave and it was very dark and you stayed there as long as you could, as long as you needed to. And it was always the third day you were raised again. And the only reason you could do it, not because you could necessarily breathe underwater or breathe under the earth, it was because you let go of your attachment to what you thought life was about. And we can do that every night. We go to bed. We take off our outer clothes. We get into maybe night clothes, and then we dream. And that dream state is exactly that Easter Saturday, that time of the out-breath. It's not that we're dead. We are everything. If you notice that in your dreams, you can expand yourself so much in your dreams. Time has no limitation to us in those dreams. And knowing when we're in those dreams that we then are open to new ideas, we often wake up with new ideas, new inspirations. Oh, this is what I'm going to do today. But understand the key to this is recognizing the temptations, what's holding me in a certain space, being willing to step onto that cross. And that cross is not just about someone suffering. It's about, I step onto that cross of freedom. I step onto that cross where I become the creative force. I let go. That's what the cross represents. So when we're on that cross, we actually die to that old, we want to go onto the cross. We want to die to those old forms. Then on that middle day, we are resting. We are in the womb. We are expanding. Then the third day, we rise again. So what is the egg about? I read up a lot about the different qualities of what the egg means. And the egg, it's interesting, first of all, to say that people have looked at what Easter means, and some have suggested it's the goddess called Estre, who was the goddess of fertility. But others have put that aside and said, well, no, I think that's more about springtime, maybe even about the equinox. So I'm going to put that aside. And I did read somewhere that it was about albis, which is about dawn. So Easter comes from the Latin word, and it's a Germanic word, and now I can't remember it, but it basically was coming from the meaning, Latin into Germanic language, meaning dawning. So Easter is a time of dawning, a time of new birth. And I like that idea. And just to say that the Christian church decided to make it the first Sunday after the equinox and after the full moon. I mean, just very cool. So first Sunday after the full moon, after the 21st of spring, 21st of March. So that's how they dated it. And I always found that very strange because in truth, the experience I'm sharing with you about the death, the quietness, and then the rebirth is connected to the new moon. That's the dark moon experience, not the full moon. The full moon hasn't got that resonance. So I often think that the Christian church actually caused some disturbance in our psyche by saying we're going to take the first Sunday after the full moon. We should actually take the first Sunday after the new moon, which would change everything. And Passover is much more connected to the right moons because Hebrew or the Jewish tradition uses a luni-solar calendar. They include the moon and the sun in their calendar. So it's much more aligned to the moon as it should be rather than what's happened in Christianity. Anyway, I wanted to add that to you because we all got a little bit confused. So I go back to my Easter eggs. So the egg is representative for many cultures as resurrection. You're breaking free. And some say, well, it's the cracking of the egg coming out of the tomb. So it's that, the birth coming out of the tomb. Others speak about during the time of Lent, you didn't eat eggs and dairy. So you often ate an egg before you went into Lent, which is where we get our pancakes from if you come from countries where we make pancakes. Or Fat Tuesday, where you eat a lot. But it was very much about the eggs. And the story was that the chickens kept laying eggs. And therefore, you had a lot of eggs by the time you got to the end of 40 days because you weren't eating them. And so often on the day, Friday, when Lent comes to an end, you'd eat all these eggs. And hence the eggs were always there for you. But I think eggs, symbolize, sometimes in some cultures, they symbolize the mourning that happens, the grief that's happening on Good Friday. They've seen red eggs symbolize that. And in the olden days, we used to paint the eggs and then roll them down hills. If you're like me from England, that's what we used to do to see whose egg would not break as you rolled it down the hill. It was a boiled egg. But nowadays, the eggs are, of course, much more likely to be chocolate and they're treats. But the eggs were very symbolic of this new birth. And it's kind of interesting that we have the Easter bunny. And I understand that came from Germany, where there was an Easter hare who actually laid an egg, which is a kind of an interesting experience. But the idea of the eggs is the new birth and the freedom, giving birth to your freedom, giving birth to your new life, and knowing that that passageway of the death, the womb, and then the birth is there for all of us, whether it's in one breath that we take, breathing out, holding your breath out, breathing in, or going to bed at night, breathing out, dying to the old day, dreaming is that middle day, and then being born again, I should say middle phase, or being born again when you get up in the morning. Or you can take it around the dark moon. First day before the new moon is the day where you die to your old month. Then you, on the second day, which is the new moon day, you relax. Third day, birth something new. So this cycle is so inherent in us all, my friends. And I just wanted to say that it doesn't matter if you treat Easter any different or you even consider it, but it is symbolic. It's a symbolic day for us to look at now as we go back into what's happening to us now. So I will end with this, that I really feel that when we are coming out of the lockdown, we need to be asking ourselves, how have I changed? What have I changed? How am I different? What have I given up? What have I taken up? What do I consider is really important to me now? And why am I doing what I'm doing? Because again, I sense that there are people who may be having the vaccine. Again, nothing wrong with that. But they're not asking the question why. So when I speak to people and they tell me that they've taken the vaccine, I go, that's great. So you're now out meeting everybody? Oh, no, I'm not meeting everybody because I actually now don't feel safe to go into restaurants. I don't feel. If the purpose of the vaccine, if that's what you're believing, is the fact that you are now no more likely to be infected with anybody with COVID, why are we not just all going outside? Why are we staying indoors? And if the truth is that we don't trust this vaccine can protect us, then why are we taking it in the first place? Or the mask, or the social distancing. Why, please tell me, why are you doing this? No judgment. But is what you're doing coming from a place of the fear, the distrust, something you've already had in your mind before all of this happened? Is this one of the temptations that needed to be burnt or die on the cross? I want all of us to have a freedom of heart, a freedom of our soul, that every choice we make is coming from a place of love for ourselves, joy for ourselves, and an acknowledgement of our connection to all life and to each other. There is nothing and nowhere that says that we should consider ourselves as not trusting each other, because we all come from the same source. We all come from that collective unconscious, that ocean of possibilities, the Great Mother. And we want to make sure that what we are releasing is not that connection. As we come out of that womb, out of that tomb, we come out to be free, to be connected, to be liberated, just as the Israelites were liberated from their slavery. What does that liberation mean? It's not physical. In other words, it's not about lockdown and being free. What is in the mind or the heart that is no longer free? I use this time around Passover, around Easter, to free the mind, the heart, the soul. And I will join you there in that place where we have no boundaries, because there is no need to see ourselves as fearful of other people. Because I am you and you and I. We know each other. We have no secrets. And we share the love that I have for you, you have for me, and that we have for each other across the globe. With that in mind, I send you many blessings. Happy Easter, happy Passover, and may all your joys, you may have abundance in chocolate and eggs. Until next time. Bye-bye now.
Thanks for listening to the HeartSpeak podcast with Dr. Christine Page. Please check out all HeartSpeak episodes in the podcast archive section on www.christinepage.com. HeartSpeak is also available on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Sticher Radio, and now playing on iHeart Radio. You can also watch the archive podcasts on YouTube. Connect with Christine on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook, including her newest Facebook group, The Great Mother Calling. Do share with family, friends, colleagues. Join us next time for another edition of HeartSpeak.